Children's Hospital of Los Angeles actually put out a brochure, Understanding Binding, a research guide for parents of transgender youth. So this is a guide for parents who have gender dysphoric children, and it kind of encourages them to embrace the idea of binding. It says that binding refers to a process in which an individual utilizes some form of multi-purpose garment to compress their chest for the appearance of a flatter chest, so that they can pass better as a male. The fact that a medical facility actually put out a brochure to help parents understand breast binding, I find really disturbing, because breast binding causes problems. So I ordered a breast binder because I wanted to see what it was like to have my breasts bound. I ordered a medium, even though I am a small person and have extremely small chest, because I really don't like things tight around me. But I also did want to kind of get an experience of what it was like to be bound. So yeah, I have a very small chest. And this is dang hard. Oh my gosh. All right. So this is a breast binder. And it is really tight. I can't even imagine trying to wear a smaller one, or if I had bigger breasts, how it would feel to have them pushed down so hard. So I'm going to put my shirt on and then wear this for a while so I can see what it's like. I've been wearing the binder for about half an hour and it is uncomfortable. I'm having a hard time taking in deep breaths. I am feeling extremely squished and itchy. It's really uncomfortable. I can't imagine wearing this all day, and I can't imagine the kind of the way it would influence my breathing, mostly, because I really can't take in deep breaths because it's so tight around my chest. And deep breathing is really important because I'm already starting to feel a little bit lightheaded because I don't feel like I'm getting enough oxygen. So this is me wearing a very loose breast binder and not for very long. I can't imagine somebody wearing this all day, especially in the heat of the summer, because it's really uncomfortable. What it kind of reminds me of is a corset. And it used to be that women wore corsets, and that was something that we sort of had to do as part of our fitting into society, I guess. I'm not sure what it was. But we sort of have gradually gotten away from things that are restrictive on our bodies, that squish our bodies and mold them into certain ways. And now there's a whole generation of girls who are gender dysphoric who are embracing the idea of restricting our bodies and squishing them and compressing them to make us look a certain way. And I find this really sad. It reminded me a lot of Little House on the Prairie. I think it's Little House in the Big Woods, where Laura Ingalls Wilder talked about her mother and getting ready for a party. And I remember reading it as a little girl and thinking how horrible it sounded. Let me just read it. It said, "They helped each other on with their corsets. Aunt Dorothea pulled as hard as she could in Aunt Ruby's corset strings, and then Aunt Dorothea hung on to the front of the bed while Aunt Ruby pulled on hers. 'Pull, Ruby, pull,' Aunt Dorothea said. Breathless, pull harder." So Aunt Ruby braced her feet and pulled harder. Okay, so this is something that women used to do because they thought that it made them look more attractive. And now girls are wearing breast binders because they have gender dysphoria and are uncomfortable in their bodies, so they're compressing their breasts in order to feel more comfortable. It makes me sad. It also reminded me of something I read that Temple Grandin wrote. Temple Grandin was autistic, and as many autistic people, doesn't like having physical attention from others, but she studied agriculture, and at one point she noticed that when cows got into their I guess they're called like cow chutes, I'm not sure, but they put the cows in these cages that push against them to hold them still for veterinary examinations and immunizations and stuff like that. And Temple Grandin noticed that when they got in these, that they calmed down. And so she actually built what she called a hugging machine for herself, because she was autistic and didn't like having physical attention. But she found that the compression from the hugging machine calmed her down. And since then, they've done a lot of research and found that autistic people tend to really benefit from compression. There's even something called compression therapy. It made me think, since so many girls who have gender dysphoria are on the autism spectrum, is it perhaps not the breast binding that is helping them feel better and less dysphoric, but the compression? That perhaps maybe these are girls that need compression therapy in healthy ways and not to be binding their breasts. And we're not allowed to ask these questions because we're not allowed to even question the idea that somebody with gender dysphoria is the sex they identify with, even when it's unhealthy, even when it causes people to do unhealthy things to their bodies, like compressing their breasts so that they don't look like females. Let me read some of the benefits of compression therapy. And these are benefits that they've seen with autistic people. So a general sense of calm, decreased anxiety, increased happiness, improved social interactions, improved communicativeness, better sleep, improved focus, lower incidence of seizures, and lowered hypersensitivity to touch. So these are all benefits that they found of compression therapy. So maybe what gender dysphoric girls need is not to bind their breasts, but to have compression therapy, to use compression blankets, to use compression shirts, to use compression socks and pants, so that they get that compression without it damaging their breast tissue. And that might have the same impact as breast binding, but without the negative effects of breast binding and without reinforcing the negative idea that they're born in the wrong body. So bottom line is that using a breast binder can cause tissue damage, it can cause skin damage, and it can cause breast damage. It can also cause cracked and broken ribs, and it can cause breathing issues. It can cause lung issues, and it can cause somebody to be under-oxygenated because they're not breathing well enough. It also can limit somebody's activity levels because it's really hard to be active when you can't breathe. And it's really hard to be active when you're feeling squished. And so if I were to try to go do sort of my normal daily routine right now, I would constantly be aware of the fact that I was limited because of my breast binder, and it would limit my motion, and it limits my ability to do things. So this is what our medical experts are telling gender dysphoric girls to do, is to bind their breasts. Rather than encouraging them to feel more comfortable in their bodies or to identify the underlying issues of their dysphoria, they're telling them to bind their breasts. And then when they're old enough to have their healthy breasts cut off. It's almost like the medical experts have just resolved the fact that we're not going to be able to ever live in a society where girls and women aren't sexualized and objectified. So for girls and women who feel sexualized and objectified, we will just go ahead and convert them into males so they don't continue to feel that dysphoria. That's really what it seems like to me. So I'm actually gonna try and remove myself from this breast binder because it is so uncomfortable. And I really feel like if I were to wear this over a couple of days' time, that I would start having damage to my breast. And again, my breast, oh gosh. Again, I'm not really well endowed. It's not like I am being super squished. I'm already fairly flat-chested. So the fact that this is so uncomfortable for me, for someone who's a small person who doesn't have very large breasts, I can't even imagine what it's like for a young woman who has large breasts. It's got to be incredibly uncomfortable. Not only that, but something like this would continually remind you of your dysphoria. So the fact that you'd be wearing something like this is so uncomfortable would constantly be reminding you that you're unhappy with your body. And instead of helping you overcome your dysphoria, it will just reinforce that dysphoria because you'll constantly be reminded of it. When you can't run because you can't breathe very well, when you can't do physical activities, when you can't go swimming because you're wearing a breast binder, because you're uncomfortable. All of these, it's going to constantly be this reminder of how uncomfortable you are. So in an effort to relieve the dysphoria, it's actually creating more dysphoria and being a constant reminder of the dysphoria. So anybody who recommends a breast binder like this, I feel like is not someone who should be listened to. Girls should not be encouraged to bind their breasts. Girls should not be encouraged to believe they're in the wrong body. Girls should not be encouraged to blame their breasts for their unhappiness and discomfort in themselves. I think it's especially important that we examine gender dysphoria in women and girls. I believe that women and girls experience gender dysphoria at a higher rate because of the fact that they are sexualized and objectified, and transitioning to be the other gender provides them with a feeling of safety and protection, and it helps them to feel less vulnerable. I actually read on a site, I think it was a Boston medical site, where girls as young as 15 can routinely have their breasts removed if their parents give them permission. Now, I don't know what kind of parent, I don't know what kind of parent would give a doctor permission to remove their child's healthy breast tissue. But the fact that a 15-year-old can routinely get this done is shocking. The fact that the National Institute of Health is paying for research in which girls as young as 13 years old are getting their breasts removed. This is being paid for by taxpayer dollars is unconscionable. The fact that if the Equality Act passes, this idea that somebody can be born in the wrong body will be legislated. Counselors and therapists and mental health experts will not even be allowed to help gender dysphoric children resolve their dysphoria. Instead, they will have to tell gender dysphoric children that indeed there is something wrong with their body, and they should bind their breasts and have their breasts removed in order to deal with the discomfort that they have inside their body. 15 years old, 13 years old, these are children. These are kids they're not legally old enough to drive. They're not legally old enough to consent to other medical procedures. Their parents are supposed to be their advocates. The doctors are supposed to be their advocates. There is no excuse for a parent allowing a doctor to chop off their daughter's healthy breasts, and there's no excuse for a doctor who does this.